Trinidad and Tobago's 1,981 square miles of lush rainforests, verdant valleys, beautiful coastlines, waterfalls, and people are all threatened by man-made pollution. The Basel Convention is one of many multilateral environmental agreements to which Trinidad and Tobago is signatory. We ratified this agreement in 1994. It regulates but mostly prohibits the transboundary movement of hazardous waste and calls for the reduction in the production of waste and its proper disposal as close to the source of production as possible.
The MEAs that deal with chemical and waste management, namely the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm conventions, should be of concern to locals, as the chemicals and waste listed under these conventions are of international concern. Namely, they cause various public health impacts such as cancers, reproductive disorders, damage to the immune and nervous system, as well as developmental delays.
This country hosts one of 14 Basel Convention regional centers for training and technology transfer, the Caribbean sub-region. Our obligations are to manage responsible disposal, ensure proper packaging and labeling of hazardous materials, and having standard transport conditions. When transport is allowed, written consent must be given, and the health and environmental consequences must be assessed and shared. Trinidad and Tobago has agreed to ban the importation of hazardous waste, minimize production, and ensure wastes are treated and disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. The Rotterdam Convention deals with banned and heavily restricted pesticides and industrial chemicals. It was acceded to by Trinidad and Tobago on November 16, 2009. This convention works with the principle that the 52 identified chemicals as of 2019 should not be exported, and importation should only happen with prior written approval. There is a class of highly toxic, long-lasting chemicals that affect tissues in humans and animals: persistent organic pollutants, or POPs. These are being addressed by the Stockholm Convention, which was adopted in 2001. It covers 30 chemicals as of 2019, most of which are banned. Signatories agree to develop, implement, and update a national implementation plan to treat with persistent organic pollutants and educate policymakers and the general public.
The ozone layer is a very thin layer that surrounds planet Earth. It's around 3 to 4 millimeters thick, which makes it very fragile, but it has a very, very important function in that it filters UV radiation from the sun. So the sun emits UV rays as well as heat, and the ozone layer is concerned with filtering the UV rays from the sun.
Man-made gases have been identified as damaging to the ozone layer.
So back in the early 1980s, scientists would have discovered that there was what we call a hole in the ozone layer. When they did research, they found out that certain chemicals produced by man were going up into the stratosphere, which is the part of the atmosphere where you find the ozone layer, coming into contact with the ozone layer and causing this hole to be formed. So the international community came together and signed on to an agreement called the Montreal Protocol. And what the Montreal Protocol does essentially is to chart out certain phase-out schedules to get rid of these substances that are causing damage to the ozone layer.
Trinidad and Tobago phased out chlorofluorocarbons and halons since 2008 and is in the process of phasing out all ozone-depleting substances. We continue to build capacity in air conditioning and refrigeration technicians, monitor imports and exports of ozone-depleting substances, have a robust legal framework for monitoring, and strong public education and awareness on the issues.
So being signatory to the Montreal Protocol, it allows us to access funding to help people in this sector have access to updated equipment, to training, to updated knowledge, etc., to really help technicians, service people, importers, and all those who exist in this sector to really do practices that can help us move away from these damaging gases.
Additional environmental agreements concern our biodiversity. The United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity and its Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety seek to prevent the extinction of species and the degradation of ecosystems. Trinidad and Tobago ratified the convention in 1996, and our areas of focus are agricultural, inland waters, forests, marine and coastal areas, and island biodiversity. The Cartagena Protocol deals with regulations for genetically modified food crops. We are obligated to develop a national biosafety framework. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora is called CITES. It seeks to prevent exploitation of animal and plant species for trade and forestall depletion and extinction. Trinidad and Tobago acceded to CITES in January 1984 and has several species listed for regulation of international trade. We are obligated to have a management authority and a licensing system to promote sustainable trade and safeguard wildlife species. The Ramsar Convention's objective is to protect wetlands of international importance. Trinidad and Tobago became a party on December 21, 1975, and have 3 Ramsar sites totaling 15,919 hectares: the Nariva Swamp, Bucco Reef Bonaccord Lagoon Complex, and the Caroni Swamp.
For up-to-date information on environmental issues and activities in TNT, please join our Focal Point network by completing the Google form found on the Environmental Policy and Planning Division's Facebook and Instagram pages.